Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be updating my top lane tier list for patch 13.13. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. To begin with, this was a very small patch. We saw 2 buffs and a relatively limited amount of nerfs. A lot of these were targeted towards pro play and just nerfing some of the very high present champs there. So I have 3 to move from this patch. Let's get into it. Varus is going to be the first champ which is moving down. He's going down to the C tier. He could also possibly go down even further towards the D tier. They really hit this champion, making him do less damage when he procs his Blight with his abilities. This was compensated with a 5% AP ratio buff on the W on hit instead, but overall it was about a 5% win rate loss in the top lane, and we're really just not going to see this pick come back. Unless they revert some of the nerf, this champ really took a big hit, and when his whole thing was kind of being really strong into tanks and being a really good answer to a lot of the tanks, you're not going to see him into bruises, and if he's not performing against tanks, then yeah, this champ is dead in the water. Ivan is also going to move down to the C tier. They nerfed his W on hit, the ratio on it, they nerfed Daisy's movement speed, and they nerfed Daisy's damage. This hurts his ability to poke out during lane, to trade with people. This also hurts his ability at level 6 to just really all in and do a huge amount of damage to people, combining with Daisy. Overall, just going to move down to the C tier. He could possibly, whereas Varus could possibly be a D tier champion and then removed when he loses popularity, Ivan could still be a B tier champion when he starts losing popularity, because in turn he'll probably see a win rate gain, rather than Varus, who'll probably just not see it, or he will see a possible win rate gain, but his play rate will decrease far quicker as the buffs were far larger towards Varus. Nico is going to move down to the B tier. Not a huge nerf, just a bit of Q CD increase, and her R now no longer disguises her for the full duration, and her W also losing 10 on hit early ranks but gaining 10 later on. On hit Nico doing quite well at the moment with the changes. AP Nico losing a bit of win rate, but overall just going to move her down to the B tier. Both the on-hit and AP builds aren't too bad though. You have options there. If her win rate drops and we see if her play rate drops and we see a win rate increase, then she can go back up to the A tier. But at the moment, a large amount of people are playing the champion, so I'm going to leave her in the B tier. Yeah, she's a very average top laner. You can pick into a lot of things, but you will also get bullied out by a decent amount of top laners. So those are the 3 changes. I'm going to talk about some of the reasoning behind where some of the other champs are placed, because this is a 3-week patch. This is kind of going to reflect the last 3 weeks of climbing, and I kind of want to talk about things. So the first champ which I would really recommend avoiding is Cassante. Unless you're willing to put a lot of games into this champion, he is not worth playing. Don't try just randomly picking him. Also, don't try and play him when you've only got like 10-20 games in. You really have to put upwards of 40 in to really get value out of this champion, and for that reason I'd really recommend just playing other tanks, as you could get more value out of them through either their CC, their low econ amounts, or just their ease of play. So that's Cassante spoken about. Things like Yasuo, I wouldn't recommend playing this champion either unless you're very much a one-trick or someone who is very familiar with the champion. He has seen his win rate drop after his hotfix buffs not too long ago, mainly because of all of his items being nerfed. Things like Bloodthirster having its pricing cost increased by 200, continuous amounts of nerfs towards Gale Force. So overall, not performing quite as well. Gragas, I'd avoid this champ because of the sustain changes. He no longer can sustain anywhere near as much as he used to, but cooldown on his passive going from 8 to 12 seconds has really hurt his ability to just go even in a lot of lanes. He still does a decent amount of damage though, but nowhere near as safe during laning phase. Akali, really high, it takes a lot of gold to really get this champ going. You have to be able to really force your leads. If you can't find your advantages and you fall behind, this champion is really hard to play, and I'd really just recommend avoiding it because of that. Gnar, not a bad champion. Consider moving Gnar up to the B tier, but he's pretty squishy. You can fall behind and it really punish it. Like if you fall behind on Gnar, it's really punishing. He's also quite gold hungry. He really values things like the Triforce, the Sterix, the Cleaver. All these are relatively expensive items. You can build a bit more cheap on Gnar, but in that case, you're usually opting into a more tanky build where you're losing a lot of control in the game, and there are better tanky options. But no, not a bad champion. Just I would consider him like a high C tier pick, definitely. Rammus, situational into heavy AD comps. I'd still recommend playing Malphite over him, though, definitely. A Volibear, really good all-in damage, nice dive champ. Win rate is kind of skewed by the fact that a lot of people play AP Volibear, which tends to be a lot worse on him, but he can utilize things like Cosmic Drive quite well, so keep that in mind. Lilia, not really seeing any play anymore. She used to be a really good answer to Scion and a couple of the other tanks, but just doesn't really see play. Consider removing her from the tier list, but I'm leaving her in C tier for the moment. Graves, the items just not doing too hot for him at the moment. He definitely works with things like Dustblade, however, but I'd rather play him something like jungle or mid over top. He is not a bad lane holder, but high mana costs on his Q kind of hurts him, so I would avoid Graves. But definitely if you put a lot of time into playing him, nail his auto cancels and his nail his animation cancels, just get really proficient at learning how to manage a wave correctly, he's pretty good. Sejuani, really good cheese like tank pick, but kind of loses value after her nerfs. Not as very gold hungry if you're playing like for yourself, because you want things like your heart still, and then you really want to be able to just power tank items. You are an early game champion when you're playing Sejuani top. She can of course go things like Radiant or even Shroud, but it does feel quite bad, especially after the nerfs. But overall, there is still value in this pick. Lots of CC, decent damage, can run things like Ignite TP. So once again, high C tier pick, definitely. Just doesn't compete against a lot of these champions if the other person who is piloting them is really good. Karma, I would recommend avoiding Karma. Karma actually close to the bottom of C tier. I think this champ really struggles. Not because she's particularly gold hungry, but because the itemization just isn't there for her at the moment. Just hearts are quite a large amount. Udyr, not performing too well, really struggles with not having a core mythic to go. Really values demonics, but Jaxo, Radiant, both these aren't perfect for him, but he can utilize both to a degree. You can go the AD variant. It just doesn't perform to the same level. Of course, you'd go things like Triforce if you're going more AD on Udyr. So that's the bottom of the tier list talked about. I kind of want to cover some of the S tier picks and why they're up here. So Jax, really powerful pick at the moment. If you're playing against Jax because he's really popular, things like Malphite and Garen are very good go-tos. Definitely recommend playing these. You can also pick things like Alawi, Fiora, and Jace, especially if you're good at those champions. I wouldn't pick them if you're not particularly great at those champions. You can play things like Singed and Quinn as more niche options, but those that's more if you play those champions already. Olaf, really powerful champion, denies a lot of top laners kits through his ability to be immune to CC. Malphite, really powerful pick, really good into AD comps, can even work into certain AP comps as well, because you have build options there. Really easy to pilot. Really strong because of that. Rengar, very much the one tricks kind of pick. I wouldn't recommend playing Rengar if you don't have a lot of games on him, but he's really rewarding if you do have a lot of games on him. He is really powerful, does a huge amount of damage. You have build options, things like static, like tank hybrid. You can also go like an assassin build or crit builds. There are a lot of options there. Kled, you can go things like a stride break on Eclipse. Kled is a really powerful champion for climbing. If you put a lot of games into him, he will definitely reward you. Zac, really powerful tank, good sustain, can neutralize those lanes. He is kind of like a similar champ towards Gragas, except for he's not been hard enough. Shen, really powerful cross map shielding champion. Really, his global is where he holds a lot of power, but he has a decent laning phase. He can neutralize a lot of lanes. He's very gold hungry if you want to be like a carry kind of Shen with like your Heartsteel, your Titanics, but if you're going more utility, then he's a good pick for that. Warwick, really powerful cheese pick, does a huge amount of damage. Whenever you're laning against Warwick, you always feel like that you'll play safe, and then you'll step up, make a misplay, and then Warwick will really heavily punish you. But of course, this champ does fall off over the game duration. Camille, really powerful for picks. Only really play it if you like already play a huge amount of Camille, but still a really powerful champion. Maokai, pretty easy to play, has really cheap itemization, lots of value in that. Things like your even shard, your Sunfires, really strong on him. Pantheon, really powerful pick, does a huge amount of damage, good lethality assassin. Probably like the low elo Jace, but still converts into a lot of power in high elo as well. So I'd say at the moment he's probably all round just better than Jace. Just doesn't have the same amount of range, which is why some people would really value the Jace over the Pantheon, but still really powerful pick. Poppy, really strong tank in the meta at the moment, definitely one of the best. Really good into dash champions, decent damage, decent survivability. Mordekaiser, really powerful AP bruiser, good ISO 1v1s, just powerful as a low elo pick. Definitely gets a lot worse as you go up in the ranks, but still not a bad pick. Kale, really punishable early game, but really rewarded later on, especially if you're getting the builds correct in the game. Akshan, really powerful if you're itemizing him correctly as well. Watch him Drew if you want to play Akshan, definitely. Riven, if you want to trick the champion, she's really powerful, has really strong builds and things like the Yomus, the Ravenous, stuff like that. Cassiopeia, really good blind pick, does a huge amount of damage, can kite out most top laners, good itemization at the moment. Ornn, powerful blind pick, does lose to things like Fiora, and like Olaf Darius, you do have to take phase rush. There are bad matchups for Ornn, definitely, but still a decent blind pick, especially if you're just looking for a tank champion with a decent amount of value. Fiora, really powerful as a counter pick into a lot of champions, does a huge amount of true damage, good sustain, good side laning, just really powerful in that regard. And Rek'Sai, kind of similar to... I can't think of some off the top of my head. Yeah, Rek'Sai, really good sustain in things like the D-Shield, Second Wind, her passive. Did get nerfed this patch, but still a really good top laner. Just overall safe, does huge amounts of damage though as well, so she can look for windows of all in. Escape tools are really powerful in her E, and yeah, just good sustain, good damage, good escape, really powerful as a top laner. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the top lane tier list. A lot of these champions are viable at the moment, keep in mind. You can play a lot of them just... as long as you're finding the right angles, you can play a lot of them. But top lane, once again, is going to be the role where you're most punished for being counterpicked. But a lot of people will counterpick poorly or not identify the correct windows to go in and play the matchup. So you can kind of punish through that, but yeah. Hopefully we see some top lane changes next patch. We will have the 2v2 mode coming out. If you want me to cover like tier lists on the augments for champions and that, then I'll probably give that a go. If people are definitely interested in it. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.